All right, let's get rolling. State Board of Elections. Where's our analyst? Oh, there she is. Okay. We are ready. There's a lot of thick reports in here. Let's see how we do.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 27 allowance for the State Board of Elections. As you can see on page 1, the fiscal 27 allowance totaled $69.7 million. This is an increase of $12.3 million or 21.5% compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 3, the fiscal 27 allowance includes 2 proposed fiscal 26 deficiencies, totaling $1.6 million in general funds. The first deficiency of $595,000 supports warehouse lease reimbursement for several local boards of elections that have relocated due to inadequate facilities. SBE reimburses 50% of lease costs when a county uses leased space rather than a county-owned facility. So the agency should provide the allocation of this deficiency by LBE and the factors specific to each jurisdiction's space needs. The second deficiency of $1 million addresses higher than anticipated vendor costs for the new campaign reporting information system. After vendor selection, the contract was approved by $6.5 million, exceeding the original estimate. In this case, general funds are provided directly to SBE rather than flowing through DOET as reimbursable funds. So SBE should comment on how it will coordinate with DOET and ensure that DOET maintains oversight as increased project progresses. On page 5, Exhibit 1 provides a breakdown of the fiscal 27 allowance. Election operations totals $29.9 million or 43% of the budget. Equipment totals $20.3 million or 29%, largely reflecting voting system investments. Personnel totals $9 million. The remaining funding supports major IT initiatives, fixed charges, communications, travel, supplies, and administrative functions. On page 6 and 7, Exhibit 2 outlines the key changes in the budget. The $12.3 million increase is primarily driven by $17.7 million in major IT project implementation costs for local boards. There are also increases for cybersecurity and election operation support systems. These increases are partially offset by reductions in MD-CREAS, IT project management services, leases, and election staffing costs. Personnel expenses increased by approximately $1.2 million, reflecting salary adjustments, fringe benefits, and 2 new positions. SBE should explain the reason for the $304,000 reduction associated with the removal of DOET's oversight costs for major IT projects from LBEs. Beginning on page 9 of the analysis, the issues section discusses implementation of 4 major IT development projects. Exhibit 3 shows that the fiscal 27 funding across SBE and DOET totals $40.5 million for the statewide poll book modernization project, the new voting system, the new campaign reporting information system, and the voter registration and election administration modernization project. On page 10, there is a discussion of the statewide poll book modernization project that will replace Maryland's aging electronic poll books. The total estimated cost is between $30 and $40 million, and the contract was approved in December 2025. The new poll books will not be ready for the 2026 elections, and full implementation is targeted for the 2028 presidential election. The new voting system project replaces the state's current lease voting system and must be certified under updated federal guidelines. The total estimated cost ranges from $100 to $125 million. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $13.9 million in special funds with a matching general fund share into it. The current lease expires in March 2027 with an option to extend to March 2029. The new system will not be ready for the 2026 elections, and full implementation is targeted for the 2028 elections. And the SBE should comment on its level of confidence that the current implementation timelines for the SPM and the NBA's IT project ensure full readiness for the 2028 presidential election, and whether additional operational, financial, or staffing contingencies may be necessary if delays occur in vendor performance, testing, or federal certification. On page 11, the new campaign reporting information system, or NCRIS, went live in December 2025. The system supports campaign finance reporting committee registrations, audits, and statutory disclosure requirements. The total estimated cost is up to $10 million. And after launch, SBE identified data conversion issues that affected reporting accuracy. The agency reported that these issues are being addressed through reconciliation and monitoring, and that the project has transitioned into operations and maintenance. The BRIM project will replace MD voter system, which has been in use since 2006. The total estimated cost ranges from $30 to $40 million, and the project is in the requirement phase, with a request for proposals anticipated in August 2026. Beginning on page 12 of the analysis, issue number 2 discusses implementation of 2025 legislation ahead of the 2026 election cycle. Chapters 277 and 278 establish a language assistance program to identify counties with significant need for voter language assistance. 5 jurisdictions were identified for the 26 election cycle. These are Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. Affected local boards have been notified and are coordinating with SBE on implementation. Chapters 320 and 321 require SBE to conduct risk-limiting audits following each statewide election. SBE has approved regulatory amendments to implement these audits, and standard operating procedures are nearing completion. Chapter 281 requires local boards to submit election plans at least 7 months before statewide primaries. As of the reporting date, 19 of the 24 local boards have received approval, with the remaining plans pending consideration. To conclude, on page 15 of the analysis, the Department of Legislative Services recommends adopting committee narrative requesting quarterly reports of all major information technology development project activities and expenditures. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Questions for our analyst? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Demaritis.
Yes. Thank you, Chair, for bumping me up a little bit over my former board member, Mr. Weissman, over there. Today is candidate
Well, see,
filing
we're going to
deadline.
save him to the end
Exactly.
because, of course, he's got his budget today. And we're going to take out all of our frustration
Excellent.
of the budget at that time. But he can think about that while you give your testimony.
Perfect. Exactly. Enjoy it. Today is, of course, the candidate filing deadline, so 9 o'clock. Please, stop on by or look at our website at that point. There, it's getting refreshed every hour or half hour at this point here. But yes, so you have my written comments here. I'll just address some of their questions here. First up, about the allocation between the LBE and the deficiencies for each jurisdiction space. We provide a 50 cost split with the LBE for reimbursement of funds regarding warehouses. And right now, some of the warehouses are in Baltimore County, Carroll County, Dorchester, Frederick, Harford, Montgomery, and Worcester counties are requiring a split, but more LBEs are anticipating as they move into newer facilities, that we're going to accommodate the warehouse space there. But I think one of the bigger ones was I wanted to address was the implementation of having a poll book system, new voting system, as well as going through the voter registration system. The poll book system, as you are aware, was a contract that was supposed to be implemented for 2026. That contract, the vendor that was selected was in non-compliance. We had to cancel that contract when I first became a state administrator. We then went out and procured a new system. It was, to have a solution and procure it was not going to be ready for the 2026 election, so we had to implement our mitigating strategy, which is the continuation of the existing poll book, which is, a tried and true method. So that is now on track for the 2028 election. The new voting system was always scheduled for 2028. We have now had the RFP go out. We have received bids, and we have sent out a notice of intent, and we have selected a vendor as well for that process. So that is now on track for 2028. Our current voting system is, still safe and reliable, but, we want to make sure that we have updates and modernization on that process there. As you are aware, the statewide voter registration system is over 20 years old. And the one thing about a system that is a technology system that is 20 years old, as you make changes to it, it is very difficult to implement those changes because it was built 20 years ago and the technology and the coding is still based 20 years ago. As as we change things, it doesn't have the capabilities as a modern system does. For example, just something that was recently in the news is like redistricting efforts. That is still a manual process because 20 years ago, it was taking a list from the counties, from the general assemblies, and then having them enter it in manually into the program and then having it audited afterwards. And that's a time-consuming element here. It's not just taking a computer file and uploading it directly into our system, which is how modern systems do it. So there is, we wanted to make sure that this is moving forward with it for the next census because we know that that is coming. Additionally, as the General Assembly makes changes to voter registration, databases or requirements, we want to have the flexibility to implement those without a huge fiscal impact because, again, 20-year-old systems require more coding, more effort than a modern system that has already kind of built it already into it. So that's where it is. So this is imperative, and so we cannot delay this project here. So yes, it is not ideal, but our team is up for the challenge, and we're aware of this because we want to make sure that Maryland always has safe and secure elections, but also has the most modern technology available at this time here. And we cannot push that project back any further than what it already was pushed back for that point there. And I think, so that's that one there. And then finally, they talked about the reduction of about $300,000 and the DeWitt's oversight over MD Chris. Basically, DeWitt no longer charges oversight for major IT projects, so that's where the $300,000 reduction comes into play. And the oversight for the MD Chris project now ends because DeWitt maintains oversight over the procurement and then the actual implementation. But once it goes into operations and maintenance, which is where this production, where the new campaign finance system is, DeWitt's oversight is no longer needed at this point. And so that's where that system is because everyone now, as you're well aware, has filed under the new system, and it's operating quite well. But with that, I open up for any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Let me ask you something, and tell me if I'm wrong in the way I think this works. And if I'm not, I'm curious about it. Years ago, it was very easy to understand precinct information. it was all, we all voted the same way, essentially. And nowadays, we end up voting, early voting, and in specific locations around. Have we, or have you, been able to bring that information and insert it back into the precinct where people actually come from, to be able to tell what goes on in each precinct?
So yes, so in the past, they didn't, because the ballots themselves weren't coded correctly. Now we are doing that. So
Okay.
that early voting is, and mail-in ballots, all are precinct related.
So this is just, you've just been able to do this recently?
Yes.
I thought there was an issue with this along the way.
Yeah, because.
So my guess is just, and I'll let you finish in a second, but just so you can get the whole picture. So I guess all the information from those elections that occurred in the past before you were able to do that, they haven't been
No, they can't, right.
They can't be corrected.
Right, because, so the ballot itself, in the past, when we sent out a ballot, it was just a ballot style. Now we're sending out the actual ballot that would be at the polling place to the individuals. So then you can tag it directly to the precinct in which it gets reported. So we couldn't go back and say, oh, the 2020 or the 99 election or something like that, and go, okay, let's rescan it and then redo it. We can't reshuffle that deck. It's only forward at this point.
Gotcha. How many cycles?
22 was the first year it started, and so we've now
22 is the first year it started that we weren't able to do that?
that we could do it with the precinct level information.
I guess, how many cycles did we miss in there? How much information is missing?
So there's only 2 cycles in which the information is in. How about if I put it that way? 22 and 24, the information is in the precinct level data.
22 and 24, it's in.
Yes. Anything before 22, it is not.
Okay. You mean even years when it wasn't complicated by the number of methods to do?
When early voting got started in 2016, that's when, because early voting was ballot styles.
Right.
And at that point there, that information wasn't implemented in the precinct level data.
Right. So prior to 2016, it was sort of a hard copy, if you will.
Right, because, but.
So the information was there, 26, so really the missing information, if you will, if you care about such things, is between 26 and 22.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Right. Yep, that's what I was trying to figure out. Anything other than that arcane question that you would like to know about? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, take care. Thank you.
All right, Department of Social and Economic Mobility. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I am Natalia Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 27 allowance for the Department of Social and Economic Mobility, or DOSEM. DOSEM was established by Chapter 605 of 2025 as a principal department in the executive branch to coordinate, monitor, and advance social equity initiatives across the state government. The department consolidates the Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, or OSBA, the Office of Social Equity, or OSE, and the Office of Minority Business Enterprises, or MBE. The department is responsible for supporting agencies and businesses in implementing social equity policies, tracking and evaluating performance, and improving coordination across programs. As you can see on page 1, the fiscal 27 allowance totals $20.8 million. This represents an increase of $4.2 million, or 25.6% compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. Turning to page 2, fiscal 26 reflects the transfer of staff and funding from OSBA, OSZ, and OMBE into the newly created department. Budget amendments realign positions and funding from multiple agencies to implement Chapter 605. Section 21 of the fiscal 26 budget bill added $2.2 million in general funds and 9 regular positions in the statewide account contingent on enactment of the legislation. So the agency should comment on whether the 9 regular positions have been filled. On page 3, Exhibit 1 shows a breakdown of the fiscal 27 budget. The Office of Social Equity totals $8.9 million, or 43% of the total budget. The Office of Minority Business Enterprises totals $6.7 million, or 32%. The Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs total $2.7 million, or 13%. The Office of the Secretary totals $2.4 million, or 12% of the budget. On pages 4 and 5, Exhibit 2 discusses the proposed budget change. The fiscal 27 allowance increases by $4.2 million compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. The increase is primarily driven by personnel expenses, including reclassifications associated with the staff realignment under the new agency, as well as increases in health insurance and salary-related costs. Additional increases support reevaluation of disadvantaged business, enterprise, and airport concession certification applications within OMBE, software licenses and maintenance, and external consulting services. Page 5 also discusses a provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act that could expand the allowable uses of the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund to include up to $5 million for DOSEM operating costs. The fiscal 27 budget, as introduced for DOSEM, includes $5 million from the CBAP and a corresponding $5 million in general fund reduction, contingent on the enactment of legislation expanding the allowable uses of the CBAP to include general agency operations. On page 6, the personnel section shows that the fiscal 27 allowance includes 71 regular positions and 7.5 contractual FTEs for a total of 78.5 positions. As of December 31st, 2025, the department reported 14 vacant regular positions, representing 20% of the authorized regular positions. Beginning on page 7, the first key observation discusses the organization of the department. A total of 4 offices comprise DOSEM, including the Office of the Secretary, to provide executive leadership and administrative oversight for the department. OSBA promotes small minority and women-owned business participation in state procurement and administers the Minority Business Enterprise Program, or MBE, a Small Business Reserve Program, or SBR, and the Veteran-Owned Small Business Programs. OSZ is responsible for advancing social equity initiatives associated with the state's regulated cannabis program and administers the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund, or CRRF, and the Social Equity Partnership Program, or SEP. OMBE is responsible for certification and decertification of minority business enterprises, or MBEs, and related entities, including those required under federal transportation programs. A second issue on page 8 discusses OSBA performance measures. Exhibit 3 shows minority business enterprise participation attainment from fiscal 21 through fiscal 25. Participation increased from 17.1% in fiscal 2021 to a peak of 21.8% in fiscal 24, before declining to 19.1% in fiscal 2025. Participation remained below the 29% statewide goal in each year. OSBA attributed the persistent gap to limited monitoring capacity at agencies, a constrained pool of certified MBEs in certain industries, and the composition of state procurement spending, including large or specialized contracts with limited subcontracting opportunities. On page 9, Exhibit 4 shows small businesses' reserve participation attainment over the same period. Participation ranged from 7.7% to 11.6% and remained below the 15% statewide goal. OSBA indicated that participation has been affected by reporting and certification timing issues, as well as limitation in a small business reserve designation of procurements. On page 10, Exhibit 5 shows that outreach and training events increased between fiscal 21 and fiscal 25, particularly for small businesses. Despite this expansion in outreach activity, participation outcomes have remained below statutory goals, and the agency notes that staffing, resource constraints, and limited agency-level compliance capacity continue to affect the translation of outreach activity into higher participation outcomes. Also, beginning on page 10 and continuing on top page 11, the analysis discusses the agency MBE participation attainment survey. Agencies identify limited staffing capacity, insufficient vendor pools, and lack of automation as barriers to real-time compliance monitoring. OSBA reported implementing enhanced compliance monitoring practices, including annual assessments and expanded training. Beginning on page 11, the analysis discusses the implementation of the Social Equity Partnership Program, or SEP, and the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund, or CRRF. For SEP, although $5 million is authorized annually beginning in fiscal 2025, none of these funds were expended or encumbered in fiscal 2025. OSZ finalized regulations, developed the application portal, and conducted a stakeholder engagement by delayed formal program launch based on feedback regarding timing and incentives. So the agency should discuss the anticipated launch timeline for the SEP, identify any remaining administrative or programmatic steps required prior to implementation, and whether it expects to expend the full $5 million in authorized funding in fiscal 2026. On page 12, the analysis discusses the CRRF implementation. The CRRF distributes cannabis-related revenues to counties based on statutory allocation percentages tied to disproportionately impacted areas. Many counties use fiscal 2025 for planning activities, including community engagement and needs assessments, rather than direct expenditures. As of March 2025 reporting cycle, most counties had not reported CRRF expenditures, and Baltimore and Wycomico counties were the only jurisdictions reporting spending during fiscal 2025. So the agency should comment on the expected timing for increased CRRF expenditures at the county level and describe any factors that may affect the pace of fund utilizations in fiscal 26 and subsequent years. To conclude, on page 14, the Department of Legislative Services recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Secretary Simmons.
It's great to see my comrade in arms, Secretary Simmons, here with us today. I had the opportunity to work with him over the last several years when he headed Employ Prince George's, and I serve on the Prince George's Workforce Board. And he's a terrific leader, a visionary, tough as nails, cares about people, and I'm very sorry that he's in this job because we wanted to keep him in Prince George's County, but he'll do a great job, so welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members, and thank you for welcoming me today. I would say that I appreciate the senator who served as my boss the last 7 years for the kind words. I didn't always feel that love in our meetings, but I'm happy I'm getting it. I'm happy I'm getting it now. As the senator said, I am Walter Simmons, the Secretary of the Department of Social and Economic Mobility. We went through a heavy transition in the last few months, but we believe that as our as our analysts noted on some of the gaps, that we're really working to resolve them. In here today, I'm joined by our Chief of Staff, Laura Gutierrez, and our Administrative Director, Pamela Gregory. I've also been joined either virtually or in person by the leadership of our team. We've moved and transitioned our model of operation to really work toward a supply and demand model when serving our business community, while also working to engage our local partners to determine the needs of our communities and our residents to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all our residents, all our businesses, and all our communities. So in here virtually is our MBE Ombudsman, Nichelle Johnson, the Executive Director of our Office of Social Equity, Audrey Johnson, who's here virtually, our Small Business Competitiveness Administrator for the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, Heather McCall, our Economic Opportunity Administrator for the Office of Small, Minority, and Women Business Affairs, Alicia Mitchell-Sinar, our Chief of External Affairs, Artie Kamali, and our Legislative and Policy Director, Davon Gardner. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee. We'd also like to thank our assigned analyst, Natalie Andrade, for her hard work and acknowledgement of efforts through this analysis of a new agency combining different offices from different agencies for this fiscal year. We've also had the pleasure of working with the Governor's Office of Finance, Mona Vadia, and Director Lily Zimmerman, the Deputy Director Lily Zimmerman, as they've really helped stand up our office. I'm happy to say that one of the vacant positions that the analyst mentioned was a Director of Human Resources that we've onboarded. So hopefully we can start moving forward and moving in a direction to operate independently. From an introduction standpoint, Speaker Emeritus Adrian Jones' legacy bill, House Bill 1283, established the Department of Social and Economic Mobility. What we've done with the Office of Small, Minority, and Women Business Affairs is really focus on the demand side of the work. We have the supply of making sure we have certified businesses, but really making sure that we have the opportunities for those businesses, the staff and the agencies understand the opportunity, understand their responsibilities, but also starting to understand the struggles or obstacles it is to meeting the needs, i.e. related to data, i.e. related to collection, reporting. And that's something we're working on to really clean up. In our Office of Social Equity, we're really steadily focused on the regulation in our regulated cannabis industry, supporting our social equity licenses, and also working on the regulations for our Community Investment Repair Fund and ensuring that our locals can get their money out and do that. It ensures the impact that the legislature requested and mandated. Lastly, with our Office of Minority Business Enterprise, that is the supply. Those are the thousands of businesses that we need to certify, ensure they maintain their certification, but also help them navigate the state's process of procurement and really work and understand that these are small, these are minority, these are disadvantaged businesses. So they may need additional supports to ensure that they can do business with the state of Maryland. When you talk about a launch on October 1st, and as I highlight the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, it's been an interesting 5 months, especially since on our second day of operation, the federal administration made one of the largest sweeping changes to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program in U.S. history, removing racial and sex-based presumptions from the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program and the Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. As I've talked with Senator earlier in her office earlier today and some of you before, why is this important for Maryland? We represent our one state, maybe not a large geographical footprint. We represent 18.5% of all disadvantaged business enterprises in America. So when the Trump administration and US DOT estimates that you could lose 10 to 20% of your businesses, that's a heavy hit for the state of Maryland that represents 18.5%. So if you look at it, we're at around 7,600 certified businesses out of 40,000. So that's our state represents a large swath of that. Along with that, and along with the sweeping change to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, this is also the year, once every 5 years, we have to reauthorize the Minority Business Enterprise Program. So certain things you learn when you say you trial by fire. I've been in the skillet for the last 5 months. But working with our team, the team that's here today, virtually and in person, I really give kudos and thankful to them that we've established 5 priority focus areas in ensuring that we meet the needs of Maryland businesses, Maryland residents, and Maryland communities. That's establishing an organizational infrastructure that the agency will rely on. Next is working and establishing an operational infrastructure, establishing and streamlining key performance indicators, internal and external community engagement to make sure that the state knows what we're doing, make sure your offices knows what we're doing, and then also and ultimately creating an economic mobility ecosystem that ensures that every Marylander, every business has the access to services that they need to have access to work, wages, and wealth. As you can see, we've done a lot in the last 5 months, and what I'm most happy about to announce that we just closed last week was establishing DOSIM's first regions that allows us to work with your constituents and your jurisdictions in a more localized manner. So that includes Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, Upper Shore, Lower Shore, Northern Maryland, and Central Maryland. As we get into the DLS budget report, I'd like to take a time to address a few factual differences from the data presented and the data collected by our office, which we hope in the coming months that we can align when we come before our next budget hearing. The first is that the 2025 annual report for OSBA, which provides verified data for the Minority Business Enterprise Program, the Small Business Reserve, and the Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise Programs, awards and payments was published on February 12th of this year and is available through the DLS library. While the DLS report notates attainment numbers for FY25 published through the MFR, those are the numbers and estimates given that the data has not been finalized by the time the MFR collection closes. The most actual and reliable data is collected and reported in that annual report on February 12th. Which I want to highlight is that we actually had a record-breaking year in payments to MBEs for the state of Maryland, where MBEs were paid $2.2 billion, which is the largest amount in Maryland history. Our data also shows that the Small Business Reserve participation attainment reached 15% in FY25. While MFR data suggests this level has not been met in preceding 5 fiscal years, we did achieve the set-aside. Additionally, the set-aside will increase to 20% for the next fiscal and subsequent years. This goes to my last point related to outreach and engagement by the Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs. We've done a ton of outreach. I think in working with our DLS partners, we need to figure out how are we accounting for that outreach and what outreach means that it goes into the procurement outreach data. But as an example of that outreach, our Veteran Small Business Enterprise Program surpassed 1,000 certified veteran business firms this year, and all of the programs have increased by newly certified business year after year. So while we do need to work on how they're categorized, we did see some of the highest payments to MBE businesses in Maryland history, and we've surpassed 1,000 certified veteran business firms in Maryland and continue to see that grow. Our written testimony is before you, and on behalf of the Department of Social and Economic Mobility, we thank the Department of Legislative Services for their concurrence on the governor's allowance budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Director. Let me be clear, it's glad to be able to see you here, but more importantly, glad to be able to opportunity to be able to work with you. These items have preceded you in reference to the turnaround time of the approval of MBEs coming out of, it wasn't your shop at first, but it got moved over to your shop. Can you speak to what was the turnaround time for the approval of MBEs prior to you getting there, and if you're tracking this information, what is the current turnaround time in reference to the approval of MBEs? Because I know veterans, other spaces have a very quick, but my constituency is very concerned in reference to the time frame in which it takes to get approved in your new shop.
Yes, the MBE certification, which is the state certification, and the 2 federal DBE and ACDBE have the longest turnaround. We've seen average times coming into the office of 12 to 16 months. It should be down to regulatory should be 4 months. That's something that we're trying to work toward and get back to and figure out what's going through. This is very different than what you see in our certified small business and our VSBE, Veteran Small Business Enterprise, which can have turnaround in 48 hours. The big key differences is that VSBE, the Veteran Small Business Enterprise, and the CSB, Certified Small Business, is a self-attestation in the eMaryland Marketplace Advantage. The DBE, ACDBE, and MBE, sorry for all the acronyms, are not self-attestation. They go through this piece. One of the big pieces that we've done to move and expedite the process, which we had to do due to the federal administration's change to the DBE program, the state had moved towards the unified combined applications. We are moving to kind of decouple the state certification from the federal certification. because every single state certification that was coupled with a federal certification had to go to that higher level of stringent processes. We also had to adhere to the federal timeline. So to ease that timeline, we're asking businesses if they want to separate their application. 2, there used to be a mandated internal procedure of a 2-hour interview for every single business. Talking with our staff, our frontline staff didn't like the 2 hours. And the question is, if we've already talked with these people for a couple of months and received hundreds of documents, what do we need to have another 2-hour interview for? So we've asked to shorten those down to 30 to 45 minutes. We're also worked with MDOT prior to coming in. They did a survey on the processes through High Street. We've started implementing those recommendations in the very first week. So Senator McRae, we hope that in the next couple of months, as we get fully staffed and implement that, we can get it from 12 to 16 months down to 6 months, down to actually 3 to 4 months. That's going to be something that we don't have the timeline for right now, but we're really starting to implement that. The big thing is, as I mentioned, we got our HR director last week. We had a number of vacancies, so we also have to backfill those vacancies. But the big piece on hearing on the 2 hours in the processes, OMB had a 25% turnover rate of employees. So part of our issue on the turnaround is 1/4 of the staff we needed to recruit and vacant. So we have implemented kind of like a culture group on our team to figure out what the state staff need to be successful in their job. We started implementing that. We're implementing the recommendations, removing some of the red tape processes, and we hope that in the next couple of months to get to 6 months, and then eventually by the end of next fiscal year, get to that 3 to 4 month.
Comments, no question. I just hope that we as a committee pay attention to this specific issue. I had a number of different small businesses to reach out about this concern, but one of the ones was a historic business. The Afro actually reached out to me last year, and they actually lost their certification, had to get it there. They got it the way it needed to be, but like when I look at historic organizations like that that's having that issue, and I had always known it to be 4 to 6 months. I had never known anything to be over a year. So to watch the process move to over a year, I hope that it's something that the committee will pay close attention to. And let me be clear, your success is my success. So I want you to be successful, and I want the organization and the agency to be successful.
How, just out of curiosity, how does one lose their certification?
So you have to go through a recertification. You have to submit a personal net worth statement, and it has to be updated. So you have to assess their finances. We also have to make sure we maintain ownership control of the 51% to make sure that's there. And so one of the big things that we have to work on is the standardization of documents, which I want to give a huge kudos to our acting Small Business Competitiveness Administrator, Heather McCall, is to make sure that we're standardized in that document collection. The second piece is timeline. When we're asking for tax statements, account statements, and businesses, especially historically owned businesses, have to go back a certain amount of years, we're going to start establishing reasonable timelines for businesses to submit those documents, but also implement reminders that they submit it. Because one of our big issues is businesses being able to get the documents. If they can't get the documents, they will be automatically certified. We need to make sure that we give routine communication document on what those timelines are, clarify what are the accepted documents, and then be proactive in reminding our businesses that they're due. And I think those are the things that, again, listening from our staff, and our staff participated in, the frontline staff participated in this strategy and refinement, and they've worked with our administrator and our 2 managers to do so. But yes, if they don't keep up with that personal net worth statement and don't submit the appropriate management controls, they can lose the certification. And some businesses go through mergers, they go through sale, and they can lose it. But sometimes it's actually just pulling that documentation. I would like to highlight, with the changes to the interim final rule from the U.S. Department of Transportation, every single DBE technically has to reapply as of October 3rd, a federal mandate. And that's something where I want to be clear on the MBE program, the VSBE program, and the CSB are all state mandated regulatory by the Maryland General Assembly. The DBE program, the ACDB, and SBE are federal programs that we're administering. So in that sense, as the US DOT did, on October 3rd, they actually revoked every single of the 7,600 certification, and they are all now having to go through reevaluation. So that is an anomaly from the MBE program.
So all the ones that fall under our program, how often do they have to get
3 years.
Every 3 years. And is this October deadline, is that anticipated that's going to be done every year,
No. So the DBE, hopefully this is a one-time ask from the federal government. There you go. That we're hoping that, and that's what we're going through right now.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. We had one more.
That's okay, sorry, one more question. The SET program, the Social Equity Partnership Program.
Yep.
Can you give us a sense of how many businesses are out there seeking help through that program? These are new, right, cannabis?
So we have 204 businesses that are going through our process, and I think if our executive director was here today, they've routinely worked and kind of went through 3 different iterations of engagement on the regulations. The issue that they've encountered is in the cannabis industry being a new industry and the nature, there's trade secrets. And a lot of times the established businesses don't want to give in a mentorship program, don't want to give their trade secrets to smaller businesses. So in the most recent regulation that the Office of Social Equity, our Executive Director, Audrey Johnson, her Deputy Director, Courtney, are working on is in that $5 million that we do intend to spend is to provide an incentive to some of the big businesses as a part of the process and working. But part of that, getting the bigger businesses to work with our smaller businesses, is in the cannabis and growing and strains and how to produce those products, or even how do you process. There is a piece of what they feel is proprietary and trade secrets that we have to been working through of what does it take to kind of cultivate and share, and what were they willing to share that won't impact the established businesses but will help grow our smaller businesses.
Okay, just a follow-up to that. I mean, the original $5 million was, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't remember the details of it, but was to support those brand-new businesses, sort of fledgling, right, new disadvantaged folks. And so you're saying now that that $5 million could be used as an incentive to the already established businesses?
So the $5 million has been allocated, but because the program wasn't launched, OSC did not draw down and use
Any of
those
it,
funds.
yeah, right.
So this will be the first year that we want to implement and use those funds. And a part of the SEPP program will be financial incentives to incentivize businesses for partnering in the program.
So I get that, but would it also go to these brand new businesses who need the capital to launch?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jacob Cash, Policy Analyst for the Department of Legislative Services. Today I'll be presenting the fiscal 27 operating budget for the Department of Budget and Management, Office of the Secretary. DBM is the primary budgetary control agency for the executive branch, including units dedicated to the operating, capital budgets, financial management, and collections on debts owed to the state. If you join me on the cover page, you can see the fiscal 27 allowance is $49 million, which is $5 million higher than fiscal 26 levels, or about an 11% increase. Most of that increase is in special funds for the central collection unit, but some personnel expenses in DBM are also driving up costs. Beginning with the performance evaluation of CCU, Exhibit 1 on page 5 shows the CCU revenues versus expenses over the past decade. You can see that CCU recoveries reached a trough in fiscal 2021 due to the pandemic, and post-pandemic revenues were lower than pre-pandemic revenues, mostly because agencies, particularly MDOT, were referring fewer debts to collection. In February 2025, a backlog of EasyPass accounts were processed from MDOT, and increased tax intercepts during the year resulted in record revenues of $185 million, of which CCU retained 17% for their operations. CCU made over $2 million in profit, but that did not reach the threshold at which they would need to make a mandated appropriation to the general fund. CCU expects debt volume and collection revenue to increase year over year, considering the current rate of EasyPass placements. The second performance evaluation begins on page 7, is for the state vehicle fleet. There is a goal of ensuring at least 25% of new vehicle purchases by the state are zero emission vehicles, or ZEVs. As shown in Exhibit 3, the state has met this goal in 2025, purchasing 90 ZEVs and reaching 46% of total purchases for which there is an option available. On the whole, since we have established that goal, the state has succeeded with 29% purchases being ZEVs. Exhibit 4 on page 9 shows the current $49 million budget broken down by unit. CCU is by far the largest budgetary unit in this budget, and they are self-funded from the fees they assess on collections. Of the remaining units, the Office of Budget Analysis is the largest, followed by Executive Direction for the agency. Exhibit 5 on page 10 breaks down the budget by item. Personnel costs make up about 2/3 of this budget, as it is a highly administrative budget. Collection services contracts for CCU are the second largest budget item, and then the BAR's budget maintenance system, BAR's budget system maintenance is another large annual expense. It's at $1.7 million currently. I'll note it has reduced from $2.5 million in the past. Exhibit 6 on page 11 breaks down the proposed budget increase of about $5 million by item. The main source of budget increase is related to CCU collections, as I mentioned at the outset, and there are more funds that are needed to support those operations, including higher banking fees for credit card transactions, posted costs because they're mailing more debt notices, higher oversight fees from DBM, and higher comptroller intercept reimbursements. There's also 5 additional positions in CCU added to handle the increase in collections, and all of CCU items together make up about $3.5 million of the budget increase. The remaining $1.4 million is related to increases for new positions, regular salary increases, and shared services, along with some decreases in the BAR's budget system, and the end of contractual support for the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. There's a discussion of the BRFA at the bottom of page 12. Current law requires that DBM provide physical copies of the budget books each year. This is advantageous for a number of reasons, including preserving one official version of record, providing an impetus for the books to be finalized in a timely manner, and availability for when the website is down. The BRFA eliminates this requirement, and it reduces $40,000 in general funds contingent on the BRFA. This provision has been introduced by the executive branch a number of times in the past, most recently 2 years ago, and the legislature has struck that provision each time. DLS recommends striking the provision again and striking the contingent reduction for $40,000 in printing costs. The personnel data section begins on page 13. DBM Secretary is adding 8 new positions in fiscal 27, 5 of which are related to the collections capacity at CCU. The other 3 positions are 2 new audit compliance analysts to assist the work of the Audit and Finance Compliance Unit, or AFCU, and 1 other internal realignment. In total, these position changes are associated with approximately $816,000, mostly in special funds. Issue 1 begins on page 14 and discusses issues with the accounting of agency resources and the closeout of revenues and expenses. The Office of Legislative Audits, or OLA, has identified serious issues related to their fiscal 2025 closeout, focusing on errors in 7 major state agencies. For the second consecutive year, there was, and to a greater extent this year, several deficiency appropriations were needed in the fiscal 27 budget to resolve fiscal 25 shortfalls, including $758 million in total deficiencies related to prior years. Of this, $322 million was needed in general funds, and most of that is for provider reimbursements in the Maryland Department of Health. Reversions in error have also occurred across multiple agencies in recent years, although they were slightly lower in fiscal 25 than in 24. Another issue is that several agencies failed to provide sufficient documentation to support the reconciliation of accrued federal fund revenues that totaled $3.4 billion. Exhibit 7 on page 16 shows where these issues were found. This includes the Department of Human Services not substantiating $2.2 billion in positive revenue entries and $1.6 billion in negative entries, including amounts that OLA found to be clearly questionable. MDOT was found to not substantiate $1.35 billion in prior year accruals, and they were not able to determine if funds received this year or for prior accruals or for current year spending. MDH could also not substantiate $425 million in accrued federal revenue despite paying an accounting firm $10 million to resolve prior repeat audit findings, which included findings of this nature, as well as MSDE, MDEM, and Maryland Labor having similar issues. These failures could result in unrecovered funds, which could ultimately require the use of state general funds to resolve any deficits. In response to fiscal 2024 closeout issues, DBM was asked to report on efforts to improve training, recruitment, and retention of fiscal staff in the state. DBM reports that primary authority for accounting functions and development of the state financial management workforce rests within the Comptroller's Office, and recruitment and retention of fiscal staff are the responsibility of individual agencies. The DBM Office of Budget Analysis provides an oversight framework for fiscal staff by reviewing encumbrances, overseeing closing amendments, reconciling health insurance funding across agencies, tracking general fund shortfalls, and reviewing reported budget actuals. DBM reports that the Audit and Finance Compliance Unit, or AFCU, provides technical assistance on an as-needed basis and reviews closeout instructions for clarity. AFCU can assist agencies in developing and carrying out corrective actions, and they may monitor their progress through regular engagement, but AFCU does not have formal enforcement authority. The Comptroller launched Maryland Accounting Academy in August 2025 to better train fiscal staff and prepare them for closeout. There were nearly 5,000 staff invited across 94 agencies, and the initial training pathways provided include government accounting and fiscal year end close procedures, the state's accounting system, and performance management. The General Accounting Division in the Comptroller's Office also provides an oversight framework for fiscal staff in the state through system control accountants, monthly closeout reviews, and the monitoring of year-end activity. The governor's allowance includes $2 million for recruitment and training of fiscal staff, state fiscal leaders, in the dedicated purpose account. Potential ideas for the use of those funds included training, targeted or proactive recruitment for related roles as they arise in agencies, potentially adding additional staff and thus capacity at certain agencies, and reclassification of roles. Here, DLS is asking DBM to comment on the planned uses of that DPA funding for recruitment and retention of state fiscal leaders. For the next issue, which is related, we'll now move to page 19 for Exhibit 8. DBM published 6 new performance measures this year to assess the performance of AFCU. Funding was restricted in the fiscal 26 budget, and that funding was released in the fall when DBM submitted these proposed measures. AFCU provides enhanced technical support to state agencies facing repeat audit findings, fiscal crises, and other financial management or audit compliance issues. And the fiscal 27 budget adds 2 regular positions for them. I'll note the unit has grown over the past few years. The new measures are limited to agencies that meet AFCU criteria. For instance, agencies must receive an audit report with an overall unsatisfactory rating or a minimum of 4 repeat findings. 5 such agencies met that criteria in fiscal 2025. However, AFCU also assists other agencies, including those that reach out for assistance and those related to IT findings that are unreported here, but those agencies are excluded from the MFR measures. AFC reports that it'd be difficult to measure all of their customers since the help desk is not set up with a ticketing system to track those ad hoc requests, but it is still the position of DLS that AFCU should look into ways to report on more than just the customers that meet their restrictive criteria. Additionally, since AFC reported not available for the number of quarterly reports submitted by agency heads addressing corrective actions, DLS is asking for more information on why that was the case. Moving to Exhibit 9 on page 21, one of the long-standing measures that we've looked at for DBM is the percentage of legislative audit findings that were repeated from the prior audit. The rate was 34% in fiscal 2025, which was higher than any other point since fiscal 2008. On February 6th, 2026, Governor Westmore released a directive to cabinet secretaries directing them to review their agency processes for monitoring resolution of audit findings and identify areas where resources could be added to address the root cause of repeat audit findings. $5 million in DPA funding has been allocated this year, and that can be used to address some of these additional resource needs. The directive stated that the Department of Information Technology will be piloting a management tool to track audit findings, inquiries, and corrective actions, and AFCU is also highlighted as a resource for agencies when seeking input, as well as AFCU will be convening meetings with agencies to develop a culture of best practices. Here, DLS is asking DBM to provide more details on planned spending of the DPA funding for repeat audit findings. The third issue I'll be addressing today is the timing of budget amendments, beginning on page 23. The process for legislative review of budget amendments requires certain amendments to be reviewed if they increase an appropriation by $100,000 or more. In these cases, the amendment must first be submitted to DLS, and then either the budget committees or the Legislative Policy Committee must review it, or 45 days must pass from the submission date. Regardless of whether a budget amendment requires legislative review, DBM requires all amendments, or DBM submits all amendments to DLS for informational purposes. Furthermore, the fiscal 2026 budget bill required that all budget amendments be submitted no later than October 31st, 2025. Exhibit 11 on page 24 shows the timing of budget amendments since 2018. Each year saw at least several late submissions, and in fiscal 2020, delays were particularly severe, with about 44% of amendments submitted in the same, with only 44% of amendments submitted in the fiscal year that they were spent. Delays have continued into fiscal 2025, and there were 25 budget amendments totaling $300 million that were submitted late into the second quarter after the fiscal year closed, and even later, 4 amendments were submitted into the third quarter after the fiscal year closed, representing total realigned funds of $234 million. Those delays hinder legislative oversight, and because any concerns raised would not be able to affect the expenditure of those funds. And late submissions can restrict the ability to assess how budget amendments might affect future fiscal expenses and closeout issues, and anything submitted after that time would not be able to make it to the Spending Affordability Committee. Here, we're asking DBM to discuss efforts that it will undertake to submit budget amendments in a timely manner, and DLS also recommends restricting funds in all 5 agencies that submitted late budget amendments in fiscal 2025, pending the submission of their timely 2026 closeout amendment. The fourth issue I'll be discussing is a costly procurement delay, looking at Exhibit 12 on page 25. DBM has a contract with Element Fleet Management to manage the maintenance, repair, and accident management program for state-owned vehicles. The contractor provides maintenance and repair services through a statewide network and handles accident reporting for participating agencies. Procurement for the new contract has faced significant delays. It was initiated in April 2022, but it was canceled in August 2022 due to the minority business regulations that they were not meeting. The second RFP closed in September 2022, and there has been promise of an award since then, but the delays have continued through the current time period. The most recent date that we were expecting the award was January 2025, and that has not been made. The most recent contract extension in August 2025 cost $20 million for less than 6 months of performance, and the daily cost of that contract increased to $82,000, or about twice the original contract cost of $42,000 per day. DLS is concerned about the rising costs of the delays and is asking DBM to provide more information on what is causing those delays. And the fifth and final issue I've prepared is on the $160 million in ARPA funding that the state has remaining. Exhibit 13 on page 27 shows that funding by policy area. It is split between many areas currently, with the largest being broadband expansion at $42 million, or 26% of those funds, particularly network infrastructure. Within public health, there's also a large portion related to the healthy schools / HVAC allotment. And states are required to expend all of ARPA funds by December 31st, 2026. And DLS is recommending restricting funds for the final ARPA spending report. The recommended actions for this budget begin on page 30 and continue through page 43. I will not read through all of them, but they are summarized for your convenience on pages 2 and 3. I'll point out that recommended actions 1 through 10, as well as action 14, are annual recommendations, while actions 11, 12, and 13 are new. But that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for our analyst for his very thorough report? All right, thank you very much. Mr. Secretary,
Mr. Chairman.
we obviously want to hear all the good things. We are an hour and a half behind.
Yes, sir. Would you like me to jump to my responses?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Jake Weissman, Secretary, Department of Budget and Management. Want to just quickly recognize the folks from DBM in the room. Mark Nicole, our incredible Deputy Secretary, you all know. Our Chief of Staff, Raquel Coombs, Katie Millag, our CFO and COO. This is her first time here, so please be gentle. Tony Fugit, our steady hand at CCU with his Deputy Jesse Lawyer. Joan Peacock, who runs our AFCU division, our incredible Executive Director of Office of Budget Analysis, Nathan Bowen, and the best Director of Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs in the state, Dana Phillips. Concerning the question on the comment on CCU, recovery efforts on page 5, CCU continues to focus on improving collections, including now allowing debtors to utilize online payments and self-service options. Overall, FY25 collections increased by 47%, and through the end of January, CCU is currently 9% ahead of its collection recoveries compared to the same period last year. Concerning the budget book provision on page 12, I know I've had this conversation with many members of the committee. Recognize we have a disagreement on this. What we would ask for is some flexibility in working together on this. The state is far behind other states when it comes to how we can lay out our budget, the sort of creativity we can do online with our budget presentations, and this provision hampers our ability to do so. Recognize that we want the physical copy, but hopefully we can work together to make sure that we can modernize Maryland's budget presentation a little bit. Concerning the funding and the DPA for fiscal leadership, and I want to thank the chair for his guidance in this as we were formulating the budget. We've already discussed a variety of potential uses, including targeted recruitment, staff capacity expansion, focusing on areas that need extra attention, especially in our entitlement-driven agencies and MDH, working on DDA, as well as additional professional development. We're looking forward to working together on these ideas. Concerning the AFCU performance measures, on page 20, DBM had already planned to begin formal quarterly reports to agency heads in fiscal year 26, building on the progressive work of AFCU. Currently, AFCU meets regularly, usually monthly, with agency leadership to review the status of corrective actions, work through challenges, and provide feedback to help ensure successful remediation. And these new quarterly reports will strengthen that process. Concerning the DPA funding for repeat audit findings on page 22, as Mr. Cash mentioned, on February 6th, the governor directed all state agencies to immediately review and strengthen their audit resolution procedures. In partnership with the governor's Fiscal Responsibility Performance Initiative, DBM will carefully evaluate any proposed funding requests. These may include targeted support for individual agencies or broader multi-agency solutions designed to improve statewide compliance and address root causes. We look forward to continuing to work with you on the issue. Concerning the timing of budget amendments, each year agencies are required to submit a closeout form identifying any remaining amendments, as DBM has no independent way to determine whether outstanding amendments exist without that notification. Once submitted, DBM reviews amendments for technical accuracy before forwarding them to the legislature and the governor's office, a process that can be time intensive. Beginning in July of this past year, DBM implemented centralized coordination within the Office of Budget Analysis, including regular reminders, active tracking, and management review to ensure progress towards the deadline. While DBM provides coordination and review, agencies remain responsible for submitting their response, and we have more detailed information in our written response. Concerning the fleet maintenance procurement delays, and my apologies to Mr. Cash, we missed this when reviewing. The Board of Public Works did approve the new contract on December 17th, 2025, with a $90 million 5-year base term and a $77 million renewal option. Again, my apologies. For the DLS recommendations, number 1, DLS recommended amending Section 2 to limit appropriations that can be placed in the contingency reserve to items restricted by the General Assembly. DBM respectfully does not concur with the proposed limitation on the Secretary's authority to manage the budget, and we would ask the committees to accept the language in the section in the budget as introduced. To the second, DLS recommended amending Section 17 to add the tracking structure necessary for legislative audits and disallow transfers to other purposes. We respectfully do not concur with the recommendation, as in very limited circumstances, this can be useful budget management tool. The language permitting the Secretary to approve the transfer of funds from various statewide allocations have been included in annual budget years for several years prior to FY 2016, and we would ask that we allow the current administration to resume this authority. DBM happily concurs with DLS recommendations 3 through 8. For DLS recommendation number 9, DLS recommended adding a section defining the budget amendment process. DBM concurs with the goal of having all amendments to be submitted by October 31st, although we would appreciate some flexibility in cases of exceptional circumstances. DBM concurs with DLS recommendation number 10. We already discussed number 11 about the budget books. For recommendation number 12, DLS recommended adding a section restricting funds in certain agency budgets pending the timely submission of fiscal 26 budget amendments. DBM respectfully can't concur with this budget limitation on another secretary's authority to manage the budget. And lastly, DBM concurs with DLS recommendations 13 and 14, and we'd be happy to take any questions you have. Maybe take a quick drink of water first.
Questions for the Secretary? I'm sorry, did I miss, did you address the ARPA money?
I don't think, did we?
There was no request for us to comment, but we are happy to provide the report.
Yeah. No, I just, so it's $160 million, and it has to be spent by the end of this year.
So we have an update that 160 million is now $137 million. So we are 96.3% spent, and we do have until December 31st, 2026 to spend.
How did you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We hold, after every submission to the U.S. Treasury, we review the outstanding agencies with spending left, and DBM has a meeting with those agencies to discuss the agency's plans to spend those dollars. One of those solutions that we've put forward is part of the Budget Reconciliation Act. It has to do with the HVAC funding that was allocated in fiscal years 22 and 23 to provide us some flexibility, and the IAC some flexibility to reallocate funding between jurisdictions to ensure that all the state money gets spent in sufficient time, and to make up and to make sure that the movement of the money doesn't disadvantage any single jurisdiction, and everybody be made whole.
We're moving that money, but keeping folks
Yeah.
whole.
What about, how does this money relate to the existing budget? So for instance, there's $18 million here left over in K through 12. Where does that fit in our overall budget plan for K through 12 this year, or does it? Was it in a previous budget and it's just being carried along? How do you account for it? And in any way, are any of these dollars, can they be backfilling things in this year's budget that we might want to?
So most of the dollars that are showing as unspent are probably contracts that had been covered in a prior year, so they're not showing up in the fiscal year 27 budget.
They're contracts in prior years that weren't executed?
No, they
Or
were
in the-
executed, but they
they're-
haven't fully
It
spent.
takes the,
Yes.
so is what you're saying to me, all of this money, I know you're going to spend it by the end of December.
That is our plan, yes.
Yes, I know you're going to do that, so I'm not concerned about that. But all of that money is already tied up in contracts that you will spend by the end of December?
Yes, there's no unallocated money. One of the requirements of the state and local fiscal recovery fund was that all of those dollars be obligated by December 31st, 2024. We did meet that deadline too. And so they are tied to sort of active projects that are moving forward. I mean, the only one that's maybe a little bit different is the administrative funds that we have in sort of DBM, that we're sort of using that to sort of monitor the agency spending and helps DBM report to the U.S. Treasury.
You're talking about the 22 million in the green state government administration
Yes,
block?
yeah.
And so does that theoretically add to the budget this year?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, are you asking if any of this is showing up in the FY27 budget as not new money, but allocated money, or?
Well, yeah, both, right? I mean, I think I heard you say all the contracts they're on schedule to go out. So I assume that those are in the budget
Yes.
in some way.
Yeah.
They're accounted for in
Right.
the budget. But you said that
Well, the administrative dollars are a contract too. It's just that we are spending that out over time also.
so that also is
Yeah.
included in the budget already?
Yes.
That's what I was trying to find out.
Sorry for the confusion.
No confusion. Just in my head.
It's a good question.
Senator Hellman.
Chairman, I just wanted to say thank you for your feedback on some of the AFCU and CFO bills that I think we'll be hearing in the next couple of weeks from the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee, and I look forward to continuing to work with your office.
Really appreciate your partnership and your receptiveness. We're really looking forward to coming to the table in partnership on those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we made it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your moving along. Appreciate it. 5 minutes to Capitol. How long are you going to be? 45 minutes? Remember the work groups that have to meet afterwards.
All right.
Land records. Land